All right, so thank you all for having me here. I'm Sarah Holiday. I'm a victim advocate with the Farmington Police Department. Excuse me. I've been with the department 13 years now and been an advocate now for 6 years. So anyway, so today what I would like to do and to accomplish today is to understand what domestic violence is, why some people call it family violence. How are you? Recognize some of you guys here today. And understand what my role is in the Farmington Police Department, why they have me there, what my purpose is there, and why they have civilians other than just police officers at the department, and how I can help with this family violence that we are being called out to and witnessing. So I'd like to always start off with a little video, because when we talk about this, it's going to be a little bit sad, it's going to be a little bit rough, so I'd like to add some humor as we begin. So I think I just click.
Again, I am really, really sorry.
Okay, Jeff. How long do I have to keep this thing on, Doctor?
Just 1 or 2 days. Long enough for the cornea to heal. And will she still be able to plunder the bloopers?
That's the follow-up to your big apology?
Take it easy, Tom Cruise and Valkyrie.
Enough, all right? My eye hurts when I roll it.
Take these. They're pretty powerful. They might put you to sleep.
Or Jen could try out that dead cat story again.
That doesn't look so bad. Nobody will notice if you let me draw an eyeball on it.
Jeff, you're not drawing an eyeball on it.
You're right, it would probably scare the parrot. I'm sorry, I feel bad, and it's not even my fault.
In what way is your giant meaty paw smacking me in the face not your fault?
But you're the one who wanted to switch sides of the bet. I didn't want to hit you in the face. It was just force of habit.
All I wanted was one little thing.
Look, I told you it was a bad idea. I warned you, but you just wouldn't listen.
I just should have known better.
Well, don't beat yourself up.
No, I'll leave that to you.
Boy, those meds are making you mouthy.
Kind of fun, right? All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We need to get started here. So, is that where I'm at? Okay, thanks. So what is domestic violence, right? This is the dictionary explanation of it. So it's a pattern of cohesive behavior in which one person attempts to control the other through threats or actual tactics, which may include any or the following. What kind of tactics do you think those are before I go to those and show those to you? Correct. Isolation. What else do you think might be used? Flattery. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? Manipulation, yes. I'm older. Yeah, you're right. They're going to manipulate them. And how else do you guys think that might happen? How are they going to, what kind of threats do you think are being used to gain control over the other person?
Against your children.
Beautiful, that's huge.
Financial
Big.
threats.
Financial, awesome, yep. Very good, you guys are really smart. Yep. So domestic violence, physical abuse is used as a method. And that's the most common, that's what we think about when we think about domestic violence, right? That's what we see on TV, that's what we see the NFL players using, right? When they show that. Sexual abuse is also used. So it's very underreported because it is a relationship that's already been established. A lot of times victims believe that they cannot report a sexual abuse because it's their partner. Who's going to believe them? And if we were to take DNA from that type of abuse, we're going to have the offender's DNA in there, but they're married or they're together. what is that going to prove, right? Verbal abuse, name calling, intimidating them by using their words, and then of course emotional and psychological abuse, right? So the abuser uses fear, guilt, shame, and intimidation to wear the victim down and gain complete power over them, right? So some of those things you guys just talked about. So it affects every community across the country. It doesn't matter what ethnic group you're from. It doesn't matter your culture, your background, your income level, your age, your sexual orientation, your gender, right? What if you're going to church? People who are faithfully going to church have experienced domestic violence in some of our worst cases. Doesn't matter what education. If you're have a high degree, we've seen doctors who've experienced domestic violence. We've seen police officers, children become victims of domestic violence. And you would think a police officer would be able to warn their children ahead of time. But I've already had 2 cases where the police officers' children are the victims of domestic violence. And they can't get their children to leave that situation. So it doesn't matter. It could be any of us, right? So this is some of the problem, okay? So a battery occurs every 15 seconds in the United States. Every 15 seconds. It's happening right now, right? Someone's getting abused, right? Adult to domestic violence is experienced by more than 15 million women each year in the United States. 25% of women who are beaten are pregnant, and I've seen that, definitely. 1 out of 2 marriages has at least 1 episode of DV. In 1 of 5 marriages, the violence will be ongoing with 5 or more incidents per year, right? So there's a lot happening in their homes. There's a lot going on, but yet they're still there. Kind of like what I talked about earlier when I was a secretary, just seeing, we're charging these offenders, and they have the same victim name attached to these cases. And why are they still there, right? Why are they still there? We're going to talk about that. So anyway, over 4,000 women are killed each year at the hands of their batterers. And in 2008, New Mexico had 171 homicides, right? So 24 of those were DV related. So because I work for the Farmington Police Department, these statistics come specifically from our department. It does not cover San Juan County, it doesn't cover Aztec, Bloomfield, all of those departments. It's just specifically our department. So in 2010, we've had 4 DV homicides. 2 of these have males beating their partners, and alcohol was involved. It's actually 3. I didn't change that. And 1 was the center shut of staff because the staff was not doing very well health-wise. But what I want to go over is the statistics for how many reported incidents there are per year. So in 2014, the Farmington Police Department had 435 reported cases of domestic violence. That's reported. That's not people calling, maybe they hang up, maybe the officers are not able to find where the DV happened, but these are actual reports that are made. We have way more than that are being called into our department. So 2014, 435, 2015, 516, and last year, 415. So that's a minimum of 1 per day that our department is receiving. 1 per day, minimum, right? Every day, I'm going to have a report come in, every day. Go off, days off, there's going to be reports waiting for me. It doesn't matter. And it seems like this year it's been even more so. I don't know why. It seems like 2 every day we're getting them. So it's a lot.
Due to economic issues locally.
Sometimes that does play a huge factor in that too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Sarah, if you had to speculate as to how many incidents are not called, what do you think that number looks like?
I would easily double that. Easily. And the reason why I say that and why I can back that up is when I do finally get the opportunity to speak to a victim who's finally decided to come and finally wants to talk to me and we can see what we can do to help them, I cannot tell you how many times they said, oh, it's happened so many times before, but I never called. Or I was always afraid to call. I was afraid he would beat me up even more, or they even talk about how at first it was just little things, and now it's progressed up to why they're there for me today. So many instances before they actually come and report it. So easily doubled, easily. Oh, did you all see that? You probably did, right? But you erased it from your mind, right? Because I want to ask you, what do you think for the Farmington Police Department of all those numbers, what that person looks like? What does a victim look like? How old are they? Who are they? What's the other thing? What nationality are they? Who's that? Who do you think it is? Who would you envision that being? Somebody take a guess.
Native American in their 20s, 30s.
And a woman, right? That's exactly what it is. That is the most common victim that we see. So it's going to be a Native American female between the ages of 26 to 35. That is the majority. Now, if you notice, the age group is a lower percentage, even though that's the highest percentage age group that we do receive. Of course, that includes males, right? So we talked about it could be anybody, right? We do have males, but 78%. So that's still a huge chunk for males, right? To be victims of domestic violence. Native Americans, of course, that's over 50%, 60%. That's huge, right? That's very common. But we do see a wide range of ages. Even older, much more, you would think, worldly and you know, experiences in their lives, but yet we do see them when they're older too, and very young.
So, Sarah, the Native Americans make up 68%.
Yeah.
These are reported.
These are reported cases. That's where the information's from.
Would there be any validity to the statement that Native American women are more willing to call? Which ethnicity is the least willing to call in and report?
Native Americans.
They are the least?
I would say that. And let me tell you why. Because when we do receive those calls from, and I'm not saying all, okay, I don't want you all to think that all of them do. It's usually a neighbor calling. It's usually somebody else making that phone call. It's not them themselves calling. Or it's their mothers, or it's an aunt, or it's a family member who's calling. Of course, I can say that about the other races as well, but because they are the biggest group, that's where you see the biggest amount of them not calling to report. It's somebody else calling to report. And usually that's how we know about it. And that's when we try to intervene and help them. And sometimes they just go back to their offender. You know, you just made me think of a case that I had where a girl, she was pregnant and she was living with her mom, and her offender thought she was cheating on him, but she had gone to meet with a friend for something, I can't remember what. So he broke into her house through a window. Broke into her house in the window. They were in the living room, and she's surprised to see him, and he starts yelling at her, like, who are you seeing? What are you doing? And she's like, what are you talking about? I was just with whoever. So again, pregnant, right? He's so angry and so mad that he gets he broke the table. He gets the leg of the table, and he starts beating on her from behind. He won't beat on her from the front because she's pregnant, but he beats on her from behind. Once he gets done with her, her mom tries to intervene and tries to get him to stop. So what he does is he starts punching her, and he throws her out, and he breaks her teeth. So you're thinking in a situation like this, I mean, she was being bad. She went to the hospital, she had a brain bleed, and she's pregnant with his child, right? So you would think the detectives bring her in, this is a serious case, we're really trying to help her, get her into a safe place, right? We're trying very hard because this is a dangerous situation, he was gonna kill her, right? The mom's mad, the mom of the victim. So do you think that this victim went to court and followed through? And who called? It was the neighbor. She didn't. You're absolutely right. But we keep in touch. She's trying to justify why she's there, why she goes back to him, why she allows him to come in. She never shows up to court. His case gets dismissed. He moves right back in with her. She has the baby. And not 2 months later, she's back in my office again because he's beating her again. Same way, from right behind, but she's outside this time. But the neighbors have to call again. Native American girl, I think she's only 23 years old. She, according to her, she's left him. That's because he's incarcerated right now for sexually assaulting another woman. But anyway, she still calls me all the time and says, what's going on with this case? She wants to know what's going on with this other case. She can't follow through with her cases, but she wants to know what's going on with the sexual assault because she wants to know if she's still going to be safe, if he's going to get out. Right? Anyway, I don't know. That story just made me just thinking about the Native American, her in particular, of just how, you know, they act as certain things. I'm not saying all, but that's how she was. Anyway, so it's all about power and control, right? That's what the offender wants from their victim, power and control. So how does the abuser gain that power and control? So they use dominance, right? The abuser needs to feel in charge of the relationship. They want to make decisions for the family and for that victim. They're going to tell that victim what to do. They expect that victim to obey the offender without question. And they're going to treat the victim like a servant, like a child, or it's like their possession. That's my one. And I apologize, I know I shouldn't say he and she all the time as the victim is being she, but that's the majority, so that's the terms that I'll use. And even though we know that can be different too. Okay. So they need to feel in charge. They want to dominate the relationship. They humiliate the victim. The abuser will do everything in their power to make you feel bad about yourself or you're defective to someone. They insult them. They name call them. They shame them. They put them down in public. Have you ever seen that in public? Have you ever seen somebody do that to their partner? It's awful, right? And to think that's just a small part of what they're going through. When they get home, who knows what else they're going to go through, right? And when they call them names and they insult them, that victim will start to believe that's who they are. They start to believe that they're worthless. They start to believe they can't go out in public and get a good job for themselves. They start to believe that they're not perfect enough. Because can you imagine somebody calling you that every single day? Instead of me saying, oh, you look so beautiful today. What if I said, gosh darn it, you suck today. You're such, you know, you can't even imagine the names that are being called to these victims. And I apologize, I shouldn't say it, and it's hard for me to say that to somebody I don't know. But they do that, right? And they isolate these victims. So in order to have these victims depend on their offenders, if they isolate them, they're more dependent on their offender. They keep them from their family and friends. They prevent them from working or even going to school. And they may require permission to be allowed to go even shopping, to even go, you know, even, well, probably not even talk to friends. Have you ever seen those boyfriends or girlfriends who, where are you going? Who are you going to be with? You know, just constant, even through text. We see that a lot. Every second, where are you? They don't respond right away. They're wondering, right? Where are they? What are you guys doing? Who are you with? Who are you talking to? So isolation is huge, right? They want the victim to depend on them for everything. They use threats. Abusers commonly use threats to keep their victims from leaving or scare them into not cooperating with prosecution. I've seen this many, many times where the offender will be put into jail and immediately that offender is calling the victim from jail. I've heard jail calls and I've heard them say, if you freaking tell, when I get out, I'm going to kill your family and I'm going to get the children, I'm going to run. They use those type of threats. I've seen the threats for people who are immigrants, I guess, or not documented, if the victim is that type of person and the offender is not, they will say, I'm gonna report you to ICE if you go and follow through with this. They threaten to, like we talked about, the children, right? That is huge, that's a big one. We hear that quite often, and that's a lot of times why they don't wanna report or don't follow through with prosecution, because they think, because they've been so isolated and don't know what's going on out there, that this person will actually follow through and take those children away from them, or even lie to say, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I'm telling you're abusing my kids and I'm gonna take those kids from you. They threaten suicide. That's very common. They threaten suicide, right? They threaten to file charges against you. For example, in regards to the children, they'll say, well, if you follow through with prosecution, I'm gonna report to CYFD, you're abusing our children, you're not feeding them, blah, blah, blah. And that scares them because they don't know what'll happen if they actually do that, even though the children, if they're fine, things like that, right? It scares them. So we do see a lot of threats, and then they're not following through with prosecution. So that's used a lot. Intimidation. Abusers use a variety of intimidation tactics. They can even make the threatening gestures or looks to their victims. Have you all seen that as well? Have you ever seen somebody do that? Just give them that one look and that person is shut down. They're no longer able to even look at anybody around them. Have you seen it? It's awful, right? They destroy the victim's property. Because if that property is very important to them, to that victim, that offender will use that to hurt them. And they will hurt their pets. That's one of the red flags that we see is somebody hurting the victim's pet. We know that they probably abuse the victim as well. Maybe even putting a weapon on display, maybe getting in a gun and just putting it here on the table. And I'm just letting you know, it's right here, you know? Don't give me no lip, right? And that's how they do. They use intimidation. Or they deny and blame the victim for their actions, right? Abusers are very good at making excuses for what they have done. For example, oh, I've had such a bad day, you know, oh man, if my dad didn't treat me like shit when I grew up, then maybe I wouldn't have acted this way towards you, you know? Or you know what, had you not, if you made the bed just right, I wouldn't have to beat your ass. I hear that a lot. Or they deny that they abuse. I don't even know what you're talking about. This abuse, it's nothing. I didn't give that bruise to you. You did that to yourself. You just ran into the wall when you fell down the stairs or whatever, right? Or denying that, of course, shifting the responsibility onto the victim as well. And that tends to be, if you just listened to what I had said, if you just done what I had told you to do, I wouldn't have had to beat you. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? No? Okay.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with mental health?
Mental health with the offender?
They actually believe that it's their fault, you know what I mean?
The offender, absolutely. Absolutely. Because had she not pushed me, or maybe they're starting to have an argument where it's just verbal, and maybe I've seen one where the offender thinks that it's a lot of they think they're cheating a lot. That tends to be a common thing. And if they start fighting back, and maybe she decides to walk away, well, then that just angers him even more. So he believes, has she just talked to me, has she just finished the conversation, I wouldn't have gotten so mad and pushed her down or done whatever I had done physically. So yeah, we do hear that. We do hear that a lot. So this is the power and control wheel. This is the Duluth model. This model was done after a study was done for battered women. So again, we talked about the power and control, right? And we talked about all the things that are used to obtain the power and control. So we talked about the threats, the intimidation, the emotional abuse, isolation, the denying and blaming, using the children. There's also male privilege in there, and economic abuse. So if you guys ever have the chance to look it up online, you're welcome to do that. It's also applies, they also have a wheel like for teenagers, they have a wheel for Latinos. They have a wheel for just kind of a lot of different wheels for different types of groups, but the main one is just this power and control wheel. So why doesn't she just leave him? It would be so easy. Like these relationships would be over with if you would just leave them. Right? So what I'm going to show you here is a public safety announcement that was done out of a different district attorney's office, but it kind of has a nice visual as to why they don't leave. And it doesn't have sound, it has music, so, oh, perfect. It's just really short and sweet, but I just wanted to show that. Thank you so much. So some of the barriers to a victim leaving their offender. They're fearful. Right? They're scared if they leave, right? They've been so isolated, they don't know what's out there. They don't understand what kind of services they can receive. They don't even understand that there's help out there for them because they don't have access to it. They've been so isolated, they don't know. Even their phones, like for example, that offender will have complete control over their phones. They want to see exactly who they've been texting. They want to see what things they've been searching. So they can't do that, right? So the economic reality is, if they're not working, how are they going to survive on their own? If they have children, how are they going to provide for them if they just leave? How are they going to do it? It's almost impossible. So they worry about the safety of their children as well. And what I mean by that is that if the victim leaves with their children, is that offender going to go over there, go to their schools, go to where the kids are taken care of, and take those children away from that victim? Which puts those children in even more danger, I would think. A lot of times victims believe, I got to keep my family together. I've got to do this for my children. So I'm not going to leave. I'm going to keep my family together. It's so important. Their childhood experiences may be that they grew up in a family where domestic violence was common. That's what they're used to. That's what they think a normal relationship should be like. So maybe that's why they don't leave. This is what my dad did to my mom. You know, everyone does that. Everyone experiences that. So I'm going to, this is just something I have to deal with. Their beliefs about themselves, maybe they don't believe they're strong enough. They've been put down so much that they don't believe that they can do it because they think that they're worthless, that they can't do anything just because their offender keeps telling them that. So they start to believe that. They don't believe that they can do this and accomplish it. And then, of course, going into the unknown, where are they supposed to go if they were to leave? If they are isolated, sometimes they don't have family here that they can run to, right? So those are just some of the barriers to why they don't leave.
Sarah, what
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the most common that you hear from your victims?
Why they don't
Of
leave?
those reasons.
They want to keep their families together. That's the most common thing that I hear. And then a lot of times they have children with them, and that's why they want to keep the dad in the children's lives. So, but you know, I always think about the children too. You know, they're witnessing this stuff, and it hurts them too, and they're going to hopefully not get into a relationship where they're being abused too. But the cycle is starting, right? It's there. So it takes an average of 7 times for a victim of DV to be able to leave their offender. 7 times. That's the norm. So I know now when I help victims, it's going to take them many times before they finally make that decision that I want to leave my offender. 7 times. And a lot of times it's just, you know, when I'm working with somebody and they come in and I've been working with them to get them on their feet, to help them get a place to live and things like that, and get them set up and get restraining orders and things like that. And then they'll come into me and they'll say, I think I want to try it again. He's been charged with it. He's going to go to domestic violence counseling. I think he'll get better. So thanks for helping me, Sarah, but I'm going to try We're going to work on this. And I'm not going to be the one to say, no, don't do it. I understand that that's part of the cycle. But I always tell them, we are here for you. You can come back and see us. If it starts to happen and you start seeing the signs, now you know what that's supposed to be like. But we do see them again. So the most dangerous time for a victim is when the relationship ends. That's the most dangerous time of that type of relationship, is that person trying to leave. So separation violence. So this is some statistics that support that, right? 75% of victims of DV homicides occur after the victim leaves the relationship. So the majority of it. An average duration of intimate partner stalking is 2.2 years. That is a long time after that person leaves her offender. The stalking that comes in with it. 54% of female homicide victims reported stalking to the police before they were killed. 31% of women stalked by a former or current intimate partner are also sexually assaulted by the partner. And I've seen that. As many as 90% of the women killed by their husbands or boyfriends have been stalked prior to the attack. So it brings me to another victim that I helped. I helped her when she was first in this relationship with her offender. And as soon as he started to abuse her, she sought help right away. The charges that were filed against him, she participated in the court process. It was going well. I was really excited for this young lady, but she was pregnant with his child. So through the course of helping her and working with her, even though he got charged with the battery on the household member charge, went to counseling and all that, she told me that she was going to go back with him again. And I understood, and I said, okay, well, that's fine. Just take care of yourself and look for the signs and so forth and so on. So he beats her again, but she's pregnant with child number 2. And this time she says, I'm ready to leave him. All right, let's do what we normally do, set up a restraining order in place, get all that going. Supported her during her court process. And she became independent. She started to get her own job. She found her own place, got her custody paperwork in place. We did all that legal stuff for her. And he was still in contact with her because of the children. And they, but I do want to say, as her incidents with him occurred, they were getting worse and worse. So by the time she decided to leave him, and she had everything in place. She had her own home. She got the kids. They had visitation set up between the two of them. One time he came to get the kids, and she was getting ready for a date. And he started to get jealous, and he started to ask her, where are you going? Who are you going with? That same kind of thing. And she's like, what do you have to know? Why do you care? We're separated. We're no longer a thing. What does it matter? Just get the kids and go ahead and go on your visitation. Well, he decided that he wasn't going to have that. He wasn't going to allow her to go on a date. He beat her up, and he sexually assaulted her. So it became worse. Her worst moment with him was after she was separated. And she was just living her life and just doing really well. And so she went through the process again. And this time she asked the judge, and she stood in front of the judge, and she said, can you please put him in jail? This is enough. I've had enough with this guy. She was strong enough to do that, right? She was strong enough to say something in front of the judge, but the judge just gave him probation. So you can imagine her faith in the criminal justice system was not very strong at that point. But either way, I wanted to just illustrate how bad it can get even after they've left their offender. So responding to domestic calls for police officers, they're the second most dangerous next to traffic stops for them. So as many calls as you saw that we get, that's a lot of double officers responding to calls. So I wanted to, I know your class ends at 10:15, right? 11:15, sorry. Okay. I didn't know if you needed more time, but I'll try to go through this kind of fast because I wanted to get to the video, which is 8 minutes long at the end. But just a little bit about why they have my position in the Farmington Police Department. San Juan County, all the other agencies do not have victim advocates with their police departments. But I think eventually at some point they will. The district attorney's office do have victim advocates, but I'd like to think that we can help victims sooner because we're able to be there as soon as the call has been received and right after the incident has occurred, and we can get to them a little bit quicker. The district attorney's office advocates don't know about these incidences maybe weeks later. So I think that's where we have the advantage over them. So these are a couple of things that we are able to do and provide. Oh, I'm so sorry. So when an offender is charged with a crime, the victim of that crime now has rights. It doesn't matter if it's DV, sexual assault, aggravated battery, any of those other crimes that you all talked about. They all have rights once that has occurred. So we're able to inform them of those rights that they have. There's a lot of rights, so I won't go over those, but they do have those. I can explain the criminal justice process to them. Oh my, sometimes they're calling me as soon as the incident happens because they want to know when their husband's going to get out. They need them. So, but part of that is I can explain to them how the criminal justice process works, and that's my opportunity to talk to them and kind of give them some other kind of help if we can. I can inform the victims of court dates. That's one of their rights that they have. They have, I can assist victims with statements at sentencing. So like you see on TV with the big murder trials and stuff, the families go up and they're able to talk to the judge. Those are victim witness statements. And so these victims of domestic violence have the same right. They can do that. So at sentencing, I can help them at the sentencing. A lot of times they don't want to stand in front of their offender, right? That the guy just beat them up and they're scared. They can write out their statements and I can read that for them. It's really a cool thing that they allow us to do. And they are able to tell the judge how they feel, what they think should happen to this offender of theirs. I can assist them with filing orders of protection. I can assist them with, the state of New Mexico has a fund that helps victims of these type of crimes, provide them with funding for medical bills if they lose work, with funding for that, counseling services, those types of things. I can transport victims to court proceedings because a lot of times they don't have vehicles by the time their offender leaves. Other resources like counseling, crisis centers, and I can answer all the questions, of course, about the criminal justice system. So those are just some of the things that we are able to do. This is just about orders of protection. I don't know if that's any of interest to you guys or not, but I'll just kind of go over that real quick. So restraining orders can be filed for victims of DV. So I don't think, a lot of people think that I'm just going to get a restraining order against my new boyfriend's girlfriend who's harassing me. You can't get one. It has to be an intimate relationship. Or you can get a restraining order for somebody who's stalking you or anybody who sexually assaulted you. Those are the only two, stalking and sexual assault are the only two ways you can get a restraining order that doesn't have to have an intimate relationship. Here on campus, I think we've had several stalking restraining orders, and I help people with those too here on campus. Anyway, so this is the Family Protection Act. It means a spouse, former spouse, parent, present or former parent, step-parent, present or former parent-in-law, grandparent, grandparent-in-law, child, stepchild, co-parent of a child, or a person with whom the petitioner has a continuing personal relationship. So a continuing personal relationship is a dating or intimate relationship. That's the definition, okay? So there's 3 types of restraining orders or orders of protection, same thing. There's emergency orders that police officers can give victims of domestic violence. If, for example, it's the end of the day, it's in the weekend, it's during a holiday, and the courts aren't open, officers can provide those emergency protection orders to victims of DV.
Can officers put those, put a protection order in place even without the victims? Like kind of the same way that the state will charge them even if the victim doesn't want them to. Can an officer put that in place even without the victim's consent?
No, which is awful, right? No, right. The victim has to agree to the order of protection, emergency order of protection. They have to agree to it. So even if their life's in danger, and we know that the offender will come back and just maybe even get them worse once the officers leave, if they don't agree to that emergency order, the officer can't issue it. So temporary orders are filed during regular business hours, and those are the ones we really help victims without the most. They also will deal with matters of custody, child support, and property. They're only good for 10 days, and they can be extended. These temporary orders can be extended when they're looking for the offender. They can't find them. They're extended when there is a criminal case in place. If there's a criminal case in place and somebody has filed for a temporary order, the order will stay in effect until the criminal case is over. And then once the criminal case is over, we can come back and they'll have a hearing. And dependent on what the outcome is of the hearing of the criminal case, the judge can usually issue a temporary order based on what the outcome is of the criminal case. So those two have correlation with each other. And permanent orders are only good for 1 year. Back in 2004, permanent orders meant forever. If somebody were to get a permanent order, that meant till the victim was saying, I want to get rid of it. But so we do have some of those still in place.
Do you know why they changed it?
I don't know why they changed it. I wish I knew. Sometimes I wish we could have the longer ones, but we don't. The only time that I've seen a permanent order be longer than a year are in cases of sexual assault, like children will petition on behalf of their children who have been abused, sexually abused, and the commissioner will issue those orders of protection up to the child being 18. So they are even 12 years long,
They still can be issued for longer than 1
they
year?
can be issued for longer, just depending on the circumstances of the situation.
So after the year, how do we get one reinstated?
Oh, right,
Does it
so,
have to happen again?
right, so after a year, they have a hearing set up for the end of that year, and the commissioner will review it with the petitioner who is the victim and say, do you feel that you still need this order in place? Is there something that's going on throughout the year that makes you feel that you need to have it? And then based on what the victim says, then they can extend it for another year. But they have to go another year, and they have to come back, So that's hard for a victim too, to keep coming back to court. And sometimes that's where we lose a lot of people to keep their
Which
orders.
one do you see the most in our area?
Oh, the temporary. For
Temporary?
sure. Yeah, the emergency, not so much. Sometimes the officers will say, we'll just put you in a shelter for right now, keep you in that safe place there so he doesn't know where you're at. And then they come and see us the next day, business day, and so we can file that other one in place. So definitely. So when we talked about all of this, how they gain power control and how they keep their abusers from reporting and things like that, this is what we're going to see in this video. This video is a little bit long, but you are going to witness somebody getting abused physically, verbally, emotionally. So if you have a hard time watching it, I understand if you need to leave the room. But it will show her coming through and dealing with everything that we talked about. And you're going to see everything that we talked about in this video. Okay.
In a nice neighborhood in upstate New York, a nice house like the ones that you know. Behind closed doors, a father commands his 13-year-old son to pick up a camera and start recording.
He's going to, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Don't think so. Can we play the actual file maybe?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that, guys, but I really want you to see it and hear it. It's the, that one, the last one. Mhm.
In a nice neighborhood in upstate New York, in a nice house like the ones you know. Behind closed doors, a father commands his 13-year-old son to pick up a camera and start recording.
Look at you, bitch. You play those stupid games with me, I'll knock your teeth out of your face.
The father delivers a verbal flogging to the mother in front of their children.
You act like in front of the kids.
It will go on for nearly an hour.
You little slut. If I see a dog treating me, I said, I won't stop. I won't stop.
It is domestic abuse, the kind we hear about but often don't believe.
I don't want to see your stupid ass go yourself. Stupid ass, huh?
Susan is 42 years old. They have 3 children. The father, owner, directs his 13-year-old son, the cameraman, to get a close-up of their emotionally battered mother.
Zoom, do you sleep too? No, not a tear out of that damn face.
He indicates he wants the tape to prove that his anger at his wife is justified. What prompts his tirade? Susan asks him if he'd like some lunch.
Come over here with this stupid and stir it up. No, you didn't leave. You didn't just come ask me about me.
He even makes his 13-year-old son join him in blaming her.
You enjoy being an asshole, but that's obvious. Yes, you do. Yeah, you do it anyway.
And if you're wondering what kind of woman would endure something like this if you're certain she's nothing like you, well, take a look at Susan on tape 3 years ago and look at the woman she really is today.
What do you see when you look at her?
A woman desperately trying to save whatever she can salvage of her family. Desperately trying to please her husband and do whatever it is that he wants her to do.
According to a Department of Justice survey, 1 in 4 American women experience domestic violence. For Susan, the story begins when she's 18 years old, the daughter of a black father, a white mother, who falls in love with a 26-year-old guitarist in a popular local band. He is talented, charismatic. His name is Ulmer.
I would go to see him play on the weekends, and we'd talk on the phone, and we just sort of grew to know each other.
Did you say to yourself, I'm happy?
Absolutely.
They got married. He worked as a musician, she with a health insurance company, and they had their 3 children. We're covering their faces at her request.
Everyone looks at you, and I know the first thing they would think is, so beautiful, so intelligent. You must have been able to take care of yourself in any situation.
I was shy. I was very green. You know, my world was absolutely inside of the walls of our home.
She says at first her husband was just very demanding and controlling, not so different from her own father, whom she described as overbearing. But she said the more she tried to comply with her husband's demands, the more obsessive his control.
Did you have friends over for dinner?
Never. He never wanted friends over. He never wanted men in his house in particular.
And your father and stepfather didn't know about this?
My husband had cut me off from my father and family for many years.
You gonna say something stupid like that?
And you can hear on the videotape how his badgering, his criticism wore her down by twisting her words.
I was watching my son do something. He said, "Don't look at him like you're interested in what he's doing." And I said, "I think I am interested in what my children do."
I think I'm interested in my children.
And he turns that into, "I think I'm interested in what my children do."
So you can think you care about your children, whatever you want to think you care about them. You don't.
And then he turned into, "I think I love my children." All in the same conversation. That phrase turned into something totally different.
Stupid ass.
In that 51-minute tape, Ulmer calls Susan stupid 36 times.
And just you standing there talking stupid like that pisses me off. But you should be on your knees apologizing, you stupid ass.
The rants.
Yes. The mental and verbal abuse, just hours. I mean, he would call it a family meeting. And these family meetings were all about what mommy did wrong today. He totally had my children completely on his side, completely brainwashed. Not only could I not believe his behavior, but I couldn't believe my own children's behavior.
She says the verbal abuse had gone on for years before the words became fists. She says the first time he hit her, it was because she forgot something he wanted at a nearby grocery store. Her oldest child, her daughter, was 19.
He beat me down to the floor. I was crawling on the floor trying to get away. I remember my daughter turning on the vacuum cleaner so that my younger children couldn't hear it.
You know more what's going on at work than in your own house.
At the time of the tape, she was working, he was not. He was jealous of men on the outside.
And this got to do with somebody at work.
That's not, I don't have
That's a lie, man.
I can't tell you how many baseball coaches I was accused of, swimming teachers, karate teacher, other parents. And
They know this line as a
But her greatest agony was the role of her children.
And you think your son was on the other side of that lens.
not only that, my younger son was right there also.
He was in the room.
Their youngest son, 8 years old.
This is so stupid ass. I don't think of it.
June 22, 2003, terrifying images of physical abuse, the kind the experts say takes place every 15 seconds someplace in this country. The difference is, this is caught on video.
You don't know what to do. Look at this stupid ass. Look at the way you look.
Behind the camera, a 13-year-old boy watching his mother slapped, slugged, and throttled by his father.
Keep playing the game, man. Knock your head off that ball.
At one point, for nearly 3 minutes, the son seems unable to record what the father is doing. He keeps the lens facing away toward his own feet.
Follow what I say to the T.
The terrified mother, Susan, covers her face while the father Omer strangles her, throws her to the floor.
You now stupid ass nerve about your stupid ass self. You don't learn after beat your nerves on time. This is not nerve.
When you look back at your age, did it crack in some other way? Absolutely. The only thing that kept me from cracking was the thought of my children.
Why didn't you leave?
A lot of it is preservation of family. I didn't want to see my family destroyed. And in my eyes, because of what he was telling me, I was the problem. So all I had to do was fix me.
On average, it will take 7 tries for a woman to leave her abuser. The psychological chains as strong as any metal.
He had literally, physically and mentally beat me down to nothing. I thought I was not as good as a piece of dirt on his shoe. And that's a place that is hard to come out of.
I remember saying to her, it's got to stop. It has to, it ends here.
I looked at her and I said, today's the day. Once I said to Lynn, that was it, she said, okay, I'm calling. And went and did it immediately.
With the help of police over the next few hours, she ran a heart-pounding race against the clock. Since her husband patrolled every minute of her day, she had to get to the children before he did, and before he made an irrational move. Officer Kathy Onions.
We decided to have Susan call the residents and speak to her husband to reassure him that she picked up the sign as she was instructed to. We wanted to document what his response was to this conversation and, have an honesty.
Hello.
Where are you? You stupid ass devil. What you mean you're afraid to come home? You better bring my son home. If you don't bring my son home, I'm gonna kill you.
In the end, Ulmer is found guilty on all counts. The judge, who will never forget that searing tape, hands down a sentence of 36 years.
The real thing is, it's terrible. And it's still rescue.
According to the prosecutor, the sentence would be the longest in New York history for a domestic violence case in which the victim managed to stay alive.
People say, murder convictions don't have that kind of sentence. What the judge said sentencing was, you had destroyed this family as much, if not more, than if you had committed a murder.
It was an unusual case and it required some unusual punishment.
So did you see everything that we talked about in that video? It's all there, right? Everything that we talked about, the isolation, the humiliation, the just trying to keep your family together, everything that we talked about. So these are just some local resources that we have here in our community. If you guys see anything here on campus, we have a behavioral intervention team you guys can report to on your school website. You guys just log into there, right, and do a report from there. Does anyone have any questions? I know it's almost time for your class to be over,
That's okay,
so,
we're fine.
okay.
I have a quick one.
Oh, yes.
Based on your own personal observations, what's the difference between men's violence against women and women's violence against men, and who is more violent?
I have seen the difference. I've seen the men be more violent towards the women. But in this, when you switch it up and it's the men taking it for a longer period of time. Like it's taken them years to report. When we finally have a man who does come in and report domestic violence against himself, against the woman being the offender, he's been dealing with it for a very long time. They're minor. She doesn't physically hurt him like a man would hurt a woman that intensely. It's just a lot of, well, it's a lot of physical too, but it's a lot of mental as well. The women tend to use more mental, I think, than the men, just in my experience and just the cases that I have seen. You know, I don't know if that's, you know, the actuality of, you know, what really goes on, but that's what I see. For sure. Yes, ma'am.
In the power control, is the situation the same if you know the man is the victim of domestic violence?
Yes, there is a power control wheel where the male is the victim. Yes.
No, but is it like with threats, intimidation, is it the same?
Yes, ma'am. It is. Yeah, they use the same type of thing. Okay. No, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
So we said this year's calls are doubled so far compared to last year's was 415. Is there like any? I know we said financial is probably a reason why it goes up or down. Is there?
Oh, right. Why is there such a big explosion in numbers? It could be, you know, and I like to believe that people are more aware that domestic violence is going on, and perhaps they'll report it more, like more people, more neighbors will actually hear it and decide to report. I'm hoping that's why it goes up. I really, you know, it could be economic factors like we talked about. It could be, gosh, just a lot of things. Yeah, I wish I could tell you. Sometimes even like during Super Bowl, we see a big increase. I don't know why that is, but that does happen. I'm sorry, yes.
If a man is abusing his wife, how common is it that he's also physically abusing his children?
It's very common.
It is?
It is very common, yes, absolutely. And sometimes if we're able to do it correctly, we can also try to file charges of child abuse, you know, in those certain types of situations where there are children there, and we are able to see it's not just an event that happened towards the woman, but maybe there's things that are happening towards the children. Yeah, definitely.
Another question was that, like you were saying in the case you said before where the court had granted visitation rights for the father, why does the court allow that if they're already abusing the mother?
Right. Yeah. That's well, I think there has to be evidence showing that the father has abused the children, and a lot of times that's not presented. And a lot of times, even if the kids are being abused, when you think about a woman being abused and her not being able to say anything, you have to think about a child in that same situation. You know, if I tell on dad, he's going to beat the hell out of me later, right? So they're not wanting to say anything. And it's hard to bring a child to court and have them speak in front of their offender. It's traumatizing for them. So courts tend not to want to do that. They don't want to put a child in that situation. I'm sorry, whoever.
You say it's more or less likely for alcohol and drugs to involve domestic violence?
More likely.
More likely?
Yeah, definitely.
You say especially around here, kind of have a really big alcohol problem.
Right, yeah, it's huge. Yeah, there's no doubt. Absolutely.
Do you know compared to the national average if there's more or less domestic violence in San Juan County?
Compared to the national average, I think we have more. Yeah.
I know you mentioned the district attorney's office has advocates also.
Yes.
Do you work with them or see any other cases outside of Farmington? I know you said you dealt with Farmington in particular, but do you see some of the other cases out in the county, and are they pretty common or consistent with what you see here in Farmington?
Yes, they are consistent with what we do see in Farmington. I am able to help and assist other victims of DV that come from other agencies. Sometimes those other agencies will actually call us and say, hey, we've got this unique case. Can you help us out? We need to get her help, and I just don't have the time, and I don't have the resources. And if a case is not charged, again, the DA's office will not be aware of the case. So that's how it gets to us first. But right, so other agencies don't have them, and we do see them.
Those statistics listed was for Farmington, not the county, correct?
Correct. Not even, doesn't even touch the county. Yes,
I
sir.
have a good question.
Oh, good.
What is your biggest regret going into this field?
My biggest regret?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a regret. Well, maybe I do have one. The biggest regret is not spending more time on myself and taking care of myself, because it can physically wear me down. All the vicarious trauma that I experience, like when people tell you their stories, you get a little bit of their trauma on you. Somehow that stays with you. And sometimes I just don't take care of myself enough to make sure I'm mentally healthy myself, and I need to make sure that I'm good for everybody else who comes to see me, that I'm not getting just worn out from it, all that. Like, oh, here's another one beating up, I don't care, I don't want to be that way. I need to work on that some more. So yeah, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
On your slide that you showed the different types of abuse, you had psychology and emotional abuse on the same bullet. Your point
Yes.
is that we shouldn't be too different.
It can be, but they're just mentally using that person and mentally just controlling that person through those, even if it's not verbal, it could just be their actions. It could just be locking the doors, like when they're in the room, or, not letting that person use the restroom. They have to leave the door open so they can see what they're doing at all times. They have to leave their phone where the offender can see at all times. Things like that. It's not necessarily verbal. It's just this psychological control that they have.
How common is it to see a male victim advocate?
It's not very common. And yeah, as a matter of fact, there was a male who was running the Family Crisis Center for a while, and he would show up and assist victims, like during restraining order hearings. He would come in, and a lot of times the commissioner, the rare times that he did show up, the commissioner is questioning, why is this male with this female victim? But and then he tried to apply to be a victim advocate with our agency when that position came up, but we didn't hire him. But it's very rare. I have only seen one, and he works for the sexual assault services. So yeah, there's one. Yes, ma'am.
If somebody has a temporary restraining order and you're trying to get it to a permanent restraining order, and they don't have any criminal charges against them,
The offender?
yeah, the offender, then do they have to file criminal charges against them?
They do not. They do not. Absolutely no. And there's a lot of times where we do have victims come in, they not sure that they want to file a police report, but they do want to have the protection of a restraining order. And right, they don't have to have a police report filed with any kind of agency. They can just file the order, have a hearing, and actually testify against their offender, and it can be granted for a year or more, depending on what the situation is. We've had those as well. A lot of times the victims don't want to deal with the criminal. They don't want to get that person in trouble. That's their child support, right? That's the financial help they need. So sometimes they don't want to do that, but they want that protection. They want that person to stay away from them. Did you have a question?
Yeah. What happens, or what is the law on if the father and a 2-month-old baby and his 2 younger kids get chased out by the mom, and he didn't have nowhere else to go, and he told somebody to go drop them off at, I don't know, his grandma's. And
The children?
yeah.
Okay.
And they literally have nothing, like no shoes, and the baby's like just with the diaper on, no bottle, no nothing. No
And
car
Sarah,
seat.
we have the domestic violence shelter.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
But
We do.
are men, this is a perfect example, are men allowed to stay at that shelter?
They are allowed. And a lot of people don't believe that they are, because it sounds like it should be just a pure women's shelter, but men are allowed to be in the shelter as well. So if he needed that protection and somewhere to go, he would be able to go and be there with the children. Even if the children didn't have any clothes and stuff, they would be able to provide some temporary things for those children as well.
guys had some good questions. Make sure that I receive your index cards with questions and answers on them, please. There will be homework over the weekend, so look for that sometime this evening. Thank you for being here. I will see you on Monday.